Well, there's also that. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. As Bruce has just said, just before we started, we are all deep fake, and that's probably the most accurate thing he's ever said. Good day, gentlemen. How are we all going?
Very good indeed.
Very
it's been a busy week.
It has been a busy week, hasn't it? Now we're waiting on, we're sort of waiting on Josh from Flite Test, because he is traveling to CES to have a chat there, and he was going to join us if he can in between his flights, just to tell us what's going on with their new CBO. But I know where we'll start, and I should have started it like this. Bruce, very sorry to hear about your daughter, and but I think your crowdfunder, or whatever you wish to call it, is going quite well, I think.
Yeah, totally gobsmacked, actually. It's so good. It's like, taking a huge weight off our shoulders. And I am, again, reminded just how wonderful the people in this hobby are in terms of their generosity of spirit and the fact they just get behind causes like this, and, unbelievable, totally unbelievable.
Excellent. Well, that's good news. And if those of you haven't seen it, Bruce has put out a video recently about his daughter's poor health, and or maybe you can put the link in the comment here as well, Bruce. I'm foolishly should have had that set up, but I haven't. So if you could put the link in the comments, that would be great. So whilst we wait for Josh, well, where should we start? I know where we'll start. I know where we'll really start. Hands up, all those are really disappointed in the Insta360 drone.
Yeah, it wasn't a drone, was it?
No, fabulous. It's the best thing I've ever seen. Actually, no, it's the best thing I've never seen. No, what is it?
Well, it's just a camera mount.
Yeah, they put out a hint, and it was marketing at its best, to be fair, because you watched it and went, they're making a drone. Really? They're going to make a drone? Why are they making a drone? It didn't go well for GoPro. Why would you do that? And we need to talk about that while I remember Big Style.
We do.
Hey, by the way, I knew it wasn't going to be... See, when I thought, where's the 3D rendering? Then I saw Blender. I thought, oh, it's a Blender, 3D render.
Very good. Yes.
And they did. They hooked me. They had me hook, line, and sinker. I thought there was a drone coming. What they were basically on about was FPV and being able to put it on. But it's a modular camera system, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, you just... all you do is you take the two halves... the two lenses, stick one on the bottom, one on the top, no drone in the shot. Quote.
Now,
okay.
I've not looked too much at it yet because I've been away. And did they link them by a Wi-Fi or something, I guess? Because obviously they click together. The video, I'm just looking at the image of them now, and they click together as a module. But if you had one at the top, one at the bottom, do they sync up? I need to look at this more. I need to look at this more.
Can you fly for more than 30 seconds at a time?
Well,
the Insta360 limited to 30-second intervals or 30-second shots or something?
There was some weird. There was some weird. You know what? I've not got in the 3D60 world. I do love my cameras. I do a lot of photography for myself, and the one bit of that aspect I've never got into is 360. I've just never thought about spending 400 quid on something I'll use for one day, and that's... I've never taken it further than that. I did look at the GoPro option, but that was like, wasn't it 6 or 8 GoPros you had to put in that mount before they released this?
Yes. Yeah, cube. Yeah, I remember that thing. Yeah.
I thought, that's nice. That's $4,000 worth of cameras. Okay, we'll move on.
Did you buy a nice GoPro Karma drone to fly GoPro in though?
I didn't, and I suspect everyone who did is quite regretting it right now.
There's only 8 or 9 of them, so it's okay.
But there is a fix now. They said they're going to release a fix.
So they've got staff. They've answered. I've missed that bit. So they've answered it.
I posted about half an hour ago. Yeah, they said there's a firmware fix coming, and it's actually believed to be in the companion computer, not the GPS.
Yeah,
those that are in the no.
I thought it had to be because, look, I don't. For the people who don't know, basically, as the rollover of 2020, every Karma bricked itself and wouldn't fly. No GPS, no compass working at all. Now, people could fly it in manual mode, but it wasn't something they wanted to do. And GoPro was staying very quiet on it up until obviously they've announced it. It didn't make any sense for it to be a GPS issue because we had the official GPS rollover earlier in the year. It had to be some internal clock.
It was a Y 2.02 bug.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, exactly.
It's what was concerning me was, did they have anyone left who could fix it? You know, if you look at the last update for this device before that, it was quite a long time ago. But clearly, obviously, they found someone out back who sort of. I remember something about that.
They'll have just brought in they'll just have brought in a couple of developers to look at it, won't they? And also by Drone saying, granted, it's not legacy GPS, although the GPS placement in the Karma was absolutely appalling.
Mounted on the main board in the middle, around with the ESCs around it.
All around it.
Yeah, I never forget that. Anyone who ever has built a craft looked at that second someone took the lid off and went,
no,
that's not a good idea.
No.
At least we talked them out of mounting the compass on the motors.
Yeah, well, if you put them on, I mean, they'll be right once every revolution.
Self-calibrating.
Exactly,
and if you sync them with all 4 motors that you do all the way around, continuous rotation.
Yeah, there's loads of ideas there. That was interesting when they did take the did that tear down, because they hadn't brought any of the headers up or anything like that, and you could see there's no, so you could instantly see that there was no route to progress on that craft. It was never going to be upgradable. Things were in terrible places, and I know it had that battery problem, but I think they were probably pleased to get them out. So actually, the only ones flying now would be the ones that were modded. Hello Rev B or B0 would be the ones that had the battery mod fix, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would.
What did they actually do? I can't remember what they actually did in the end. Was the batteries were falling out of the back, weren't they? So there was a clip. I can't remember. Was it the aircraft that changed or the battery? I think it was aircraft, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was body of aircraft. They did something in that, and then they pretty much ended the entire department overnight, didn't they? It's a shame because it runs PX4. That's the flight stack it's running.
Yeah,
I'm surprised there hasn't been someone who's tried to port Ardru to it.
They weren't the lawyers. They tried, but Nick's lawyers wouldn't let them do it. They wanted 3DR let the Solo become the open Solo project, which was good of them, and that hand of friendship was extended to the Karma when GoPro basically walked away from it, and they got the GoPro lawyered up and said, "No way, never." So that's
one way to look after your people, in it. Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, I'm not sure "no way, never" was actually what they said. If one of them happens to see this in the near future, but it was something like that.
No is just the beginning of a conversation to get towards yes. If you talk about any negotiation, no is just at the start. They should have kept pushing.
I've met some girls who've said that too, but anyway, I've been to Haverfordwest and Milford Haven. Anyway, moving on very swiftly. So that's the GoPro Karma.
Yeah.
It was grounded. That's that. That's the Insta1. What else has happened?
Evo 2 today by, how do we say their name? I still haven't worked it out. Autel. Autel.
I think, I don't know.
Yeah, I always struggle with it. They've announced the Evo 2 today, which is the worst kept secret since the last drone release, pretty much. One aircraft, but 3 different camera options. I think they're going to sell it with each of the camera options available, but it is the same aircraft as I understand it. It's a bit really like a Mavic 2 stroke Evo 1 on steroids. Headline figures, 8K camera. Now, I'm a bit confused because I'm being told the 8K is 1-inch sensor, but I thought it was 1/2 inch. Then there's going to be a 6K 1-inch sensor, which we know about, and then there's a dual thermal version as well. It's packed with sensors. it's got cracking flight time, 40 minutes. It looks a lot bigger. When there's a review gone up an hour ago, they've sent a few out to reviewers and in the US, and it looks about almost a third of the size bigger than the original Evo. My only thing with this is it seems a strange time to release a craft that doesn't have any hint towards complying with legislation right now. And it feels like a model based on the last generation. If you take Skydio have shifted the plates. Whether it's the best drone in the world or not is irrelevant. What they are doing changes the way object avoidance works and things like that. And yes. It shifted the technology plate that we're on. And I just feel this is like last generation. It's like before a car gets replaced, a model, they always release that facelift, don't they, where it's got extras and all of this stuff, and it almost feels a bit like that. But
the Botox version.
It looks like it's on Botox if you look at the images. I don't know. At the end of the day, it could be of the current generation, because the next Mavic from DJI could still be very similar. I just think it feels like the plates have shifted with the Skydio release, and I think traditional object avoidance isn't going to cut it anymore.
Don't you think, though, that DJI is just cunningly sitting on the fence? I guess Autel were already down the route of tooling up to make this thing. Yeah. I guess that would explain why you would release it without the features. Yeah. But I think everyone's aware now, be you in Europe or be you in FAA land, big changes are afoot in the next 2 years. And I suppose you're buying, because the other thing that's been released today is the another super secret, the rerun of the Phantom 4 Pro.
Yes. Well, it's official. It's on the site now, isn't it? It's all on the site.
Yeah. That was released pre-orders today. It was released in CES land, wasn't it? Yeah. And that, we've known about that for months. It's a terrible secret, that was. But a lot of people didn't realise they'd stopped making them.
No, I think they were in a difficult position with that one. My understanding is there was an issue with getting some camera parts, and they allocated stock. And it wasn't just that. If you look, the X4S for the Inspire 2 stopped being made. So if you look, it was all of the 1-inch sensor cameras with the the manual focus adjustable lens with the shutter that seemed to be an issue, and I don't know exactly, but it seems to have been that or something around that. Hopefully the X4S will come back, because people want that camera for mapping, because it's got the mechanical shutter and the global the global sensor read with the mechanical shutter. It's the only drone on the market that has that in a consumer model currently. So
is it really? Is it only got? Yeah, I mean, grown-ups use the Sony, I can't remember the name of it now. Grown-ups don't use D anyway.
It is the only off-the-shelf drone with a mechanical shutter, and that's why the mapping guys were swallowing them up left, right, and center, because you don't get the shift, rolling shutter effect when you're mapping. And I know they held. There was that you still had the Enterprise version, the RTK, that was still available, so it makes sense that they probably held stock back for that. But I don't know, it's this release from Autel should have been 12 months ago. That's how it feels. Let's be honest, it might be fully upgradable to have all of the upcoming legislation potential, because there's no reason it couldn't. But I don't know. I don't trust 8K. I think 8K is nonsense. Just like when I see 8K written on the front of a telly, it doesn't. It's like the old processor wars of 200 megahertz, 300 megahertz, 400 megahertz. There's a point where diminishing returns comes in, and actually, it's interesting. If anyone follows the camera channels, I do a bit of photography, as I mentioned, and the Northrops this week put out a video actually on why they're going back to 1080p.
Oh, yeah.
Because they stood there 12 months or so ago, or 2 years ago, and said they're going everything to 4K. And the reality is, dealing with 4K is the biggest pain in the ass that there is from a storage point of view, from anything. Even dealing with this low bitrate camera 4K on these drones, even at 100 megabits a second, it's still not top end, and even dealing with that, most people's computers can't handle it. So 8K, who we don't need 4K, let alone
Well, it's 3D TVs all over again, isn't it?
And what they argued was, if you look at any YouTube channel, anyone who puts video online, you will find 80% of your views is on something like this. And that's where your content's being seen, and you don't need 4K on a device because most of the device screens are not 4K anyway.
I don't know. Well, Bruce probably makes his productions in probably use film, I should imagine, don't you, Bruce?
480 by 640, that's me.
That's interesting. What do you record yours in, Bruce? 1080 or?
If I'm using drone footage, I use 2.7K because it allows me to crop and pan and edit. 4K, usually limited to 30 frames a second, and I like to get a more flowing cinematic, well, it's not cinematic, but it's a more fluid effect, which means a higher frame rate. So I tend to go to 2.7K and then crop out the props if I've got props in view and stabilize it. And after I've done all that, it's 1080p effectively, but I've got more flexibility.
What about when you're doing your videos for yourself? What do you record that in?
I've got that's just an HD 1080p camera. I am looking at going to 4K for similar reasons. When I'm doing shots of models and things, it gives me more flexibility. And as I'm getting older and shaky with the Parkinson's, it means I can wind up the stabilization without everything going blurry.
It's funny, right? Because I moved to 4K 3 months ago, but deliver in 1080, and I think I'm going to go back to 1080 because I'm not doing the crop much. I'm finding I'm hardly ever doing it, and the ball ache of dealing with the storage. I've just built myself a new PC because I wanted a new editing machine. I'll be talking a bit about that on the channel. And I watched this video from the Northrops, and it just when something just that you think you're bloody right, you're just so right. We all get baited into this next bit of, you need to be in 4K. You don't need to be in 4K.
Mind you, I'm running only. My machine's got an Intel. What is it? 80. Can't remember now. But it's not a high spec machine. I've got 32 gigs of RAM and only a GTX 1060 video card, and I can edit 4K in real time using DaVinci Resolve, which is pretty acceptable. And if you get slowed down, you can always use proxies and things. But I think the problem is a lot of people using the Adobe system, which is kind of slow, doesn't make much use of the video card. Once you get a decent setup, 4K is as easy to edit as 1080p, and because drives are coming down in price, I've been throwing 1 terabyte SSDs in my machine as I need them, and everything flows really quick. It's amazingly fast. It's very little difference in workflow between 1080p and 4K.
It is. It's interesting because I did all my editing on my iMac, which I'm now selling. It's over there in the corner, and that's a 2012 iMac. That's how old that is. That's an Intel 3 series i5. Nothing special. It was fine for 1080p, but it gave me problems when I moved to 4K, mostly because of the onboard graphics. So I started doing everything then on my MacBook Pro. I've always been a Mac man, but I got fed up of plugging in a laptop every 5 minutes to do anything, and I had to put an external SSD in all the time for putting the data on because the onboard was too slow. So this time I've back to Windows. It's the first time I've built a Windows PC in 15 years, I think it is, because what I built for about £1,400 is equivalent of the $3,000 Mac, and I've now moved from Final Cut to Resolve. I'm fumbling my way through. There's some bits of it that frustrate me massively, but it's much easier to just have it on a PC now, and it's flying.
Yeah, mine's only an i7, and it was actually a 2,000 New Zealand dollar Dell system, so it was super cheap, but it just works really well. So, and the one thing you want for Resolve is 2 monitors. Makes a world of difference. I find it so much easier when you haven't tried to cram everything onto 1 monitor. In fact, I'm thinking of going to 3 monitors and using the third one as a full screen viewer for editing, which will make life easier.
The only thing that annoys me, have you used Final Cut at all? No. There's the great thing of Final Cut is if you've got 2 clips, you can move it away and move it back, and everything that's attached to it stays attached to it. You don't have to tell it to. And in Resolve, you have to link the clips and things like that, and it will do what you want it to do, but you have to do it. And in Final Cut, you didn't have to think about that. It just, if you moved that to there, anything that was after that point moved forward, and anything with it moved back, and anything, and it's, because I've used it for so long, I'll move something and not think about linking it, and the whole thing's screwed up.
So are you using the cut page or the edit page?
Edit page.
You look at the cut page, it's a lot more like Final Cut Pro in terms of the way it handles media.
Okay.
So, yeah, but like yourself, I came from Vegas, and when you're getting that new learning curve there, it's so many things you know how to do on your old software. You think, oh, damn, and the learning curve is so frustrating to start with. But once you get past a certain point, you never look back, and it's all good. It's like with any software when you're changing ships.
And just remind me, Ian, how much did you pay for your Resolve?
Resolve is free.
Oh,
I used the free version.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
I used the free version for about 3 months until I was sure I really liked it, and then I stumped up for the studio version. I didn't really need the extra features, but coming from a software development background, I realized $300 is a really good value, and I am happy to support people. I always believe in buying good tools rather than borrowing them. So I paid the money, and I actually bought the dongle rather than the code, because it means I also get the studio version of Fusion if you have the dongle. And Fusion's a fantastic compositing software. It's brilliant. I do a lot of my effects are all done in Fusion, and the Fusion that's built into Resolve is nowhere near as stable or as good as the standalone Fusion. So I can use the standalone.
It's something because obviously I've only switched 2 weeks. I think I'm 2 weeks into Resolve, so I didn't jump straight in yet. You know, I had a Final Cut Pro license because Final Cut Pro I think is 300 quid or 200 quid. I've still got that for some stuff. I've moved over to Resolve as long as I'm happy. I will get the license as well. What annoys me actually, and I'll have a rant here, is the fact that Adobe do not support a decent price licensing on Premiere at all for creators, any basic video editing use. It's incredibly expensive for you to get involved in.
Yeah, 1 year's worth of Adobe costs you as much as buying Resolve, and Resolve has always had a policy of free updates, right from way back in the early days. I think version 12. Since then, they've gone right through. You haven't had to pay a cent for the new versions. It's brilliant.
Yeah, but sorry, Gal, we got sidetracked.
No, that's fine. I was going to type an answer, Blue Fire there. Josh might be coming. He's between flights on his way to CES. So we just, if he can get a gap, he's going to phone in from the airport. So that is what's happening with Josh. So I'm not going down the route of what I was going to talk about with him just yet. Bruce, how is your, well, let's open the remote ID can of worms. It's 21 minutes. We managed to avoid it for 21 minutes. What will I say is the thing that most offends me? There are many things that offend me about it, but the thing that most offends me, I think, is the idea of everybody panic registering flying sites, and then no more will be allowed. Where the heck's that come from?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. The worst thing of all, of course, is that after 12 months, you won't even be able to put on flying displays at other events because there won't be registered sites. So you won't be able to fly your traditional model aircraft there. So it removes model aircraft from the eye of the public. Therefore, the thing will die a death. It's kind of crazy. And the other thing is, with all this new regulation, there's drones flying over Colorado at the moment. It's got fleets of drones flying over Colorado. And apparently it's illegal because they're flying at night, and the FAA has no record of a waiver being given for that, or any authority given for that, and apparently it's not military or military contractors. So someone is breaking the law. They're talking about oil prospecting or something they're using for oil surveying. So a company's doing it perhaps. So they're breaking the law. So why would they actually? How would the system fix that? Because we've got people who are breaking the law. I can imagine they're going to say, well, let's do some illegal drone flying, but hell, we better make sure we've registered and got an electronic ID working before we do.
I don't. Do you believe? I don't believe that at all. I think it's another flipping Heathrow, Gatwick. What am I talking about?
Well, there's video of it. But the thing that struck me, the video I've seen, one of them looked like a helicopter, and the other looked like the Starlink constellation of satellites that Elon Musk has launched. Although having seen some other footage, there have been other pictures with strobes on. But I'm thinking, if you were trying to do something covertly, you wouldn't put LEDs and strobes on your drones, would you?
It's the finest ones money could buy. I did wonder if it's Starlink, because I've seen just in a couple of places actually of unrelated to anything flying, people saying, what's that going through the sky at night? I've seen a line of lights. I mean, a few places I've seen that now, and people are saying, no, Starlink.
A lot of the sightings have been just after sunset too, which kind of points to that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Blue Flyer saying RID Won't happen in the UK. Blue Flyer, you've opened up Mr. Mad. You've opened up the very man. Remote ID is happening, but thankfully not like in the Americas.
Yes, no, we don't have the network ID element, and that's the problem. Is you can't even say remote ID anymore because it's suddenly become a layered concept. Up until this proposal, remote ID, as everyone knew it, was your aircraft transmitting data. Now, that has suddenly changed to broadcast ID and network ID through the FAA proposals within the EU European legislation, which is now in law and will become into effect from June 2020. We will have the requirement for the broadcast ID element. However, that is all in law. It's all set in stone. It has to be accessed by an open device. It's nothing scary. Whilst we argued 6 and 12 months ago that we don't want our location data being transmitted for anyone to pick up on a phone, right now it seems downright reasonable compared to what's being recommended in the USA. And I'm sitting here going, I'll take that. So within the EU, all drones sold within the EU within 2 years of June this year will have to have broadcast ID. However, it will only be aircraft in the A series of categories. Aircraft that don't comply can still fly. They can still fly outside of congested area. They can still fly away from people. And the fundamental difference in the EU regulations to the FAA ones is at a high level, the EU regulations give you more permission if you comply than you have today. Basically, it's not quite that simple, but that's the basic premise. The FAA are taking away your entire freedom and only giving it to you back if you comply. And that is on every aircraft of every type above 0.55 pounds. And that's the fundamental differences here.
They're not even giving it back, though, if you've got a traditional model aircraft. And the EU system looks like a carrot, and the American system looks like a stick. And we all know which is the most effective when you want to modify human behavior, perhaps except in countries with Sharia law. But apart from that,
that's right there.
Of course, I crinkled the map because congested area always comes up. I don't know. Can you see the yellow on the map there?
Yes.
Any yellow bits, and then there's the odd dot, and the dots are villages, and that is what in the UK the CAA considers a congested area. Don't ask me how I know, that's it. As long as you're outside of those, if anyone's arguing the toss about my house is in a congested area or not, if it's not on this chart in a yellow dot, it's not in a congested area. And so there's a lot of the UK is available for flight.
And that's the reality. You know, if you're a Model R, the thing with drone ID is this will really not bother ready to fly drones. If we just take that element, technically they can comply fairly easily, okay? Because they have GPS, they have digital radio links, they have smart devices. Anything that you've bought in the last 12 months technically should easily be able to be updated to comply with this. From a manufacturer standpoint, for them, it's easy because it's just mostly software. The hardware is in place. They don't need to worry about it. With regards to the Model RC, planes, helicopters, gliders, it's an entirely different ballgame. You don't have flight controllers. You don't have GPS on board. You don't have the same type of radio control links with smart devices on the other side. And whilst in the EU, they've actually put into the laws to say, look, we want to encourage people to comply. So we're going to allow third-party companies to make hardware that will allow you to comply. That is basically not possible under the FAA proposals. There's three fundamental reasons. Number one is the serial number requirements. You could probably get around that. Number two, it has to be so integrated with the flight control system that it prevents flight when it's not working. And that's going to be very, very difficult to do. And thirdly, you have to send it all of the data to the FAA to certify it. Every aircraft with a serial number will have to be individually registered with the FAA before they will allow it to fly. So the way remote ID in the US will work, even when you've gone out and bought your aircraft, you will not be able to fly it until they tell you. And they actually explain that you'll actually have to go online, put its serial number in, wait for them to send you a document that says, yes, you're allowed to use it. Then you've got to give the details of that document to the USS provider or the UTM. And then they'll allow you to connect to their system. And then after about 3 days, you might be allowed to use your aircraft once you've paid a £5 a month subscription or whatever it is. You figured out if your phone tethers to the device properly. And by then, you've just thought, sod it, I can't be asked.
So what's the problem?
Yeah, no, it seems simple to me. And I think you uncovered. Sorry, Bruce. I just want to get Ian to. You mentioned something to me before we started.
Yeah.
About once you've got an aircraft with all this, and then you go to the AMA site to fly.
Yeah, I picked this up off someone else, and I'm going to dig it in the documentation. My understanding of this is aircraft that don't comply will only be allowed to fly in FIRs, FAA. Well, this is the one bit of this I've struggled with throughout digging my videos. Honestly, the cuts for these is ridiculous. Flight. What is it? I've forgotten the FIRs. What's it stand for? I've forgotten.
Just call it a FRIA. That's what
FRIA.
everyone else
Yeah,
does.
FRIA. Everyone called FRIA. You will only be allowed to fly in those areas, but only aircraft that don't comply with remote ID standards are allowed to fly in them. So if you were to buy an aircraft that was compatible remote ID, it wouldn't be allowed to fly in those areas. So you either got to fly in them or outside them. You will never be allowed to fly in both.
Well, you wouldn't want. I mean, obviously, it'd be dangerous because they have the two conflicting types. In close proximity. I mean, they're bound to bump into each other, aren't they? It's obvious, really. Yeah. Well, yeah. It's just on for like an onion, many layers, multiple reasons.
Yeah.
The FAA thing. FAA recognized identification area. Thank you very much, AJ. And Anthony, the joys of living in Germany. Yes. Yeah. Sir Patrick, FAA stinks. You've been saying that for years. It's a ruse. Yes.
Now, I saw a question. I just want to answer it if I can. He mentioned about a quad. Where is it? Blue Flyer. It was a Blue Flyer.
Blue Flyer, yeah.
What did he say?
This one. Will I need to do broadcast ID with my 5-inch quad?
As I understand the European regulator, is he in the EU, Blue Flyer? Where is he? Where are you?
He's if you want to. He's in Northolt. He makes the maps.
That's not UK, is it? It's not really the UK up there.
No, it's London in the UK. No.
Basically, in the UK, as long as you're not flying in, what you're doing today, you should be able to do exactly the same moving forward. Because you're not allowed to fly near people, and you're not allowed to fly in congested area, and you won't be allowed to do that if you don't comply. So, basically, nothing will change for you. It's that simple, as I interpret it. And I have gone back through all of the EU regulations. And whilst, look, I think it's probably safe. And I said it, I didn't say it on my second video. I said it on the first one. Everything we say is to a point in interpretation. We're all having to interpret bits of this. Some of it is crystal clear, and some of it is as grey as the ANO is at the moment in the UK. They leave large parts of this because they don't say something is the case. You have to interpret that as being correct. However, there are bits of this we still don't fully understand, and we won't until the laws absolutely come into play and we see the actual technical documentation for the remote ID standard, the technical documentation for the aircraft requirements, because they haven't published them yet. They won't be doing that until June. So some bits of this we're having to go, well, they're not saying you can't, and in all other aspects they're saying you can't if you're not allowed, therefore that should mean you can. And the self-builders has been the big one. A lot of people asking about, what happens if I build an aircraft in the EU? Really, there is very little to worry about in the EU. I have to be fair. I don't see anything that's going to cause anyone any great issues here.
Did you ever think you'd see the day when we're saying the EU regulations are so much better than American? I never dreamed it.
I got a video from 6 months ago telling us to kick back at the EU regs. It makes that look a bit silly now.
A 1-to-1 rule makes it A2 category. I'm going to have to pull James. I'm going to have to email.
What's he on about?
So A2. I don't know.
What did he say? What's he saying, James?
In the 1-to-1 rule, apparently.
1-to-1, A2 category, fairly useful. Yeah, A2 is a very useful category because it's sub 900 grams for starters. 1-to-1. What do you mean by the 1-to-1, James? It's funny. What's funny?
I'm gonna pull him in. Chris Webber saying, I'm glad to hear you guys are having as hard a time understanding this. The great thing with Ian living in Wales is nothing ever happens there. So if there are 700 or 800 pages of documents to read, he's just gone mad. It's perfect, really. Perfect sort of thing.
In another month, I'll be reading the A&O again to try and get a head around my PFCO. If it's not that it exists in about 6 months' time, so I'm not sure what will happen with that. However, have they done something? It's hidden. Everyone's going to be taken off horizontally.
2 words in cap 722B.
What's he found? He's a devious little bugger, is James. Let's have a look what he's found.
Cap 722BR. It's getting more like real aviation, though, isn't it? As we know, where the weight of paperwork must exceed the weight of the aircraft before you can fly. There's. I've sent you the link, James. It's on the book of the face. He's going to do it. Yeah. So this is why. This is perhaps. Well, actually, no. Before I go down that rant. Bruce, where are you at with your thinking? I see you've had another video telling everyone to stand by or give them your voice. Where are you at?
Well, I see that any organisation that can produce an NPRM like the one we've just looked at is not really going to be receptive to change. I mean, like with the Section 336, this all started when 336 was repealed. And if we look at the strategies that the AMA used and everyone else used to try and stop the repealing of 336, they all failed abysmally because the FAA was determined to repeal it. It doesn't matter what anybody says, they just did it, and they called for submissions and ignored them all. And the AMA stood there and worked alongside the FAA, and they still got kicked out of the game, basically. So we need to take a different strategy, because the strategy, if you, as Einstein said, repeating the same actions and expecting a different result is a sign of insanity or something. So it's like, no, we have to take a different tack. And the only people who are going to change the minds of the politicians and the bureaucrats are the public. The public, at the moment, public hate drones. The media has done a wonderful job of vilifying drones. So we need to use that hate of drones, because they may hate our tiny little toy drones, but do you think they're going to love Amazon drones screaming overhead all day? Of course they're not. So we need to turn that around and show the public that this NPRM is actually going to make things a whole lot worse, not better. And that I'm basically going to try and produce a series of releases and videos and approaches to the media, because the media need to be able to make some mileage out of this. The reason they publish all these drone hysteria stories is because it gets eyeballs on pages and screens. So we need to be able to provide them with the same opportunities with our side of the story. That's what I'm working on at the moment. And for those who don't know, I ran what was at the time the world's most widely syndicated web-based news service back in 1999. I was the creator, the CEO, and the editor. And I really investigated how the news business worked and what was the driving force behind news organizations, which is why I became number one. So I understand, I can sit on the other side of the fence and go, if I was a news editor, what would I be looking for if I wanted to make lots of money and get people to my news site? And I think I have a solution. I think I know the formula. So I'm going to use that to introduce the media to the other side of the coin. And by using the media, we can use that to change public opinion, because public opinion's all that's going to matter. Politicians, lobbyists can line their palms with silver, that's great. But if they're not going to get voted back in, that revenue stream dries up. So even more important than appeasing the lobbyists is appeasing the voters. Because if you're not in power, you're not going to have the lobbyists throwing money in your pockets. So we're going to make sure that the politicians are aware that the public are not happy with the outcome or what this NPRM will produce in terms of changes to the technological environment, the educational environment, and the safety of the world around them. So I've got a number of strategies. I'm keeping my powder dry and keeping it close to my chest, because I don't want to pre-arm the CDA and all the others who are effectively going to be against us. I don't want to pre-arm them with information they could use to counter what we're going to release to the media. I want the media to release this and have the other people going, oh, we didn't think of that. And in which time public opinion hopefully will start to shift a bit. And it's the only weapon we've got. It's the one that's been used against us to date. But we just turn it around, point it the other direction, and use it to our advantage. It's all we can do, because you can put, there could be 1 million comments on this NPRM all saying no, 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 and honestly, I don't think it'll make the slightest bit of difference.
I think you're still going to do it though, but you're right. Just the numbers game. You've got to
You've got to have the numbers as well. And I mean, from my pitch, basically where I'm coming from to make this newsworthy, here am I, a guy on exactly the other side of the world to the USA, rallying global forces to come and comment on this NPRM because it is so bad that the whole world is concerned about it. And that's a news angle. That's a news angle. This little guy that built his own cruise missile and predicted the dangers of these drones, he's coming out now and saying that the Americans have got it wrong. They're going to make things more dangerous by doing this. And the media will listen to that. Whoa, what's he got to say? And then you can start feeding out the press releases, the videos, the information the media needs so that they can publish sensational story after sensational story, telling the public of America how they're about to be exposed to a world of incredible danger and how their technical innovation is going to dwindle and dry up because children won't be able to innovate anymore because you have to buy stuff off the shelf. So the only people innovating will be the companies in China. You're going to lose the technological lead to companies in China that provide you with store-bought solutions with built-in transponders and things. That's the angle you've got to take. It's disadvantaging America in a huge way. Trump is going to make America weak again if he follows this NPRM.
Well, it's just nonsense on so many levels, isn't it? And you're right about. I'm coming to you, James, right now. I promise. But the thing with the a protest against delivery drones, that's just what happened in Australia, wasn't it? That was the unforeseen that Google didn't quite get. That they didn't want it, and they marched them out of town. And I suspect, good angle. I like it. Right, 1-to-1 ratio man. Tell us about it. Well, we see the letter T on that chair. Tell us about 1-to-1.
Okay, well, we're going to play a game of Where's Wally? And you basically have to try and find Wally in the middle of a haystack. Because basically, what I've worked out is the people who wrote EASA were basically playing games with us. And what they were trying to do is to see if we could go and spot the thing which would screw us the most, and see who could spot it last, basically. So I'll show you what we'll come across. Basically, so within CAP 722B, which talks about the training that you need to go through to meet the A2 category, which is your 30 meters on takeoff or down to 5 meters if you have the low speed mode fitted.
Yeah.
So it goes through all the requirements of that. And here we have the training syllabus. So this is the theoretical examination.
Can you zoom that browser window for us a tiny bit, please? Ratio man. That's it. Thanks, man.
There you go. So if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, can you see that there? 1-to-1.
1-to-1 rule.
Now, what on earth could that mean? Now, if you go and do a Control F and you search for 1-to-1 rule, it's only there in that document. You go into CAP 1789. It's not in there either. It's not in anything that the CAA produced apart from at this point in CAP 722B. However,
this really is a group of people that needs to get out more, isn't it? But well done, James. Well done for finding it. But it's not
said he was devious. Anyway. Devious little beggar.
If we go back all the way back to 9th of October 2019, which seems like a very long while ago, which is the acceptable means of compliance and general and guidance material, which was put out towards the end of last year. If we search for the 1-to-1 rule, we find a reference within the A2 category here, which basically talks about, as a reference, when the unmanned aircraft is operating in close proximity to people, the remote pilot should keep the unmanned aircraft at a lateral distance from any uninvolved person that is not shorter than the height 1-to-1 rule, i.e. if the unmanned aircraft is flying at a height of 30 meters, the distance from any uninvolved person should be at least 30 meters.
Okay.
So 5 meters is fine when you're below 5 meters. As soon as you get to 6 meters, you have to be 6 meters away. When you get to 7 meters, you have to be 7 meters away. So I've started writing an article. So this is the article where I've done some really nifty diagrams here. I hope you like them.
You've been stealing clip art again, James.
But remember, it's nothing in this world if it's not a 3D render. Is we going to spin around or zoom in and zoom out?
Well, these are actually 3D renders, except I just screenshotted them, so they're never 3D. Unfortunately, they were 3D, so hopefully you'll forgive me on that. So this is the rule. So as you get higher, the person has to be further away, which kind of renders it not very useful until you realize what you can do. So basically, when I was talking about everyone going to be taking off horizontally, what you can now do is get up to 5 meters and take off at a 45-degree slant from yourself, and then you maintain your one-to-one rule. You just have to hope that you're not next to a building. You're not doing a roof survey or something like that. Otherwise, you fly into the building. But yeah, basically, if you want to know how takeoff and landings are going to be taught in the future, we're going to be talking about glide slopes now, rather than sort of direct descents. If you're going to do a direct descent, then you're going to have to, be well away from people, which seems a little bit crazy, really. So yeah, that's the one-to-one rule. Very snuck in very, very briefly. That's the only reference to it in the new regulation, apart from in this IASA stuff, which is the acceptable means of compliance, and it's referenced there, and that's it. So it's
that's the only inconsistency you found in that document, though.
Well, I'm still looking. I'm still only about halfway through the documentation. There's about, I think I worked it out. There's 12 documents in total if you count the JARIS SORA stuff as well. You've got the JARIS SORA, and then you've got an Annex A, B, C, D, and E, which are all around about 50 or 60 pages each. So, that should keep you busy for a week or so. 250 pages for your SORA, and then you've got your implementing act, your delegated act, your acceptable means of compliance. You've then got your opinions. You've got your 722A, your 722B. You've got your CAP 1789. So really, we should be thankful that they've made it so easy for us.
Absolutely. I was sent one today. I've got to read. Oh, I'll stop sharing actually. Yeah, I was sent one today. I'm just trying to get a quote from it, and that's for this for the Lake Victoria Challenge. That's reams and reams, and not Lake Kivu now, but reams and reams of stuff that will surely send me to sleep. But that's your job, though. You write the safety cases for people, so you should be the man that knows all this stuff. Come on, James.
I'm not too disappointed, to be honest, because the more complicated it is, the less people know how to do things, and then the more people come to me to go and ask how they do it. So
yeah, James is going to make a killing next year. Honestly, he's going to be in a Bentley.
No, a second.
I doubt it. To be honest, I think I feel a little bit sorry for the police. You were going to turn up to a site and they're going to be like, right, okay, can you get the scales out? Does this weigh 899 grams or 901 grams? And then they'll have to work out whether it's a toy or whether it's not a toy, and then whether it's got a camera or it's not got a camera, and whether which training course they've completed, whether they need an operations manual or not, what the distances are, whether it's in low speed mode when it was flying, whether the propellers were designed not to hurt someone. It's going to be, if they thought that
how many joules of energy? Don't forget how many joules of energy. We all know that one.
So it's going to be fun to enforce, I would imagine. So I think there are some benefits to it. I don't want to be too negative, because there are some good things with it, but God, they couldn't have made it much more difficult. They couldn't have made it more complicated if they really wanted to. But maybe it'll be a good thing for the industry.
Maybe they'll get some tips off the FAA for making it more complicated and difficult.
They seem to be the kings. They're
probably consulting to aviation authorities around the world as we speak.
Probably. Did we see? I've just put a link in the comments. Did we see this one has kept popping up probably, I don't know, every 18 months or so, I reckon this company pops its head above the parapet, and that's the Skyrights crowd again, have launched air management for the railroad industry, because that airspace over the over the railway that plainly belongs to the railway and is plainly currently regulated by the railway is very valuable, and they should make some money out of it. I don't know, was I the only person that picked up on that again? They keep popping. They're persistent. Yeah, persistent. They keep sticking their heads above the parapet and having another go. But my word,
it is. There was something else I saw this week that crept up again. I can't remember who it was. It's one of the drone manufacturers. The Evolve, is it?
Yes.
There was something from them as well. There's a new drone from them too.
There is. I saw that again today, but I must admit, with all this new stuff, the new Eva and all this, meh. As you say, the Skydio is interesting, but other stuff, meh.
I think the problem is we're in a transition period. Okay, so I would expect everything sold today, even if it hasn't got it, could update. That shouldn't be an issue. But releasing drones now, right in the midst of all of this bad press, can't be good for business. Let's be honest. You know, say, yeah, we've got a lovely new model, and the FAA could ban you from flying it anyway. You know, releasing today into the American market isn't ideal, is it? Let's be honest.
I think they've got to retain a presence. It's about having a profile. If you disappear from site because you haven't released any new products, you run a commercial risk, and your competitors may be releasing new products which may be just slightly evolutionary rather than revolutionary, but if you don't counter that, then you get pushed down the heap, and then when you are able to release compliant products because the FAA has finally decided how they're going to implement this, you won't feature on the radar, so your competitors will have effectively stolen your market by stealth. I think it's an essential. It is a necessity, but it's not a necessity because we need the product. It's because they need to maintain their share of the market.
It's an advertising spend rather than brave new thing.
Well, did you see the news about Intel? I heard that they were discontinuing the Falcons.
They have, yeah.
Both of them.
Did I know that? Yes.
The F8 Plus as well. And I'm kind of like, you know, obviously there's not enough money in there for them, but it was a fantastic aircraft. They had a loyal customer base. There seems like that surely there is some profit to be made there. Whether it's huge amounts of money or not, I don't know. But
well, okay, let's do the numbers. How many people registered in the US, Gary, for 107? Do you remember what the numbers were? 50. Look, we know, what's it? 50,000. I'm sure it's around 50K, wasn't it? 50,000.
Oh, much more than that.
Was it? Okay, let's take the UK. Roughly 5,000 in it, James. PFCO, it's always hovering around that area. Let's be honest, how many of those 5,000? I bet 500. I bet 50 haven't bought a Falcon, let alone 500. Let's be generous. Let's say 500. They're not making a lot of money.
I think you're looking at 50.
Handfuls.
50 is probably a maximum.
How much were they selling that drone for?
Well, it started off at about 26, 27, I think, plus ancillaries, and then but I think it was down to about 18 plus ancillaries.
Okay. So let's say they're making 12 grand. Let's say it's pop. Yeah. Let's be generous in it, and let's 50 times 12. Sorry, I'm going to use the calculator. Times 12, it's pennies. 600 grand to Intel. They spend that on an evening bloody after work party compared to what Intel making in normal money. 600 grand isn't going to cover the CEO's train ticket for 1 week, let alone anything else to go to a conference, is it?
Well, I bet you they make probably not far off that in terms of one of their light shows.
Yeah,
that they do.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they're going very well, aren't they?
Yeah.
But I think the Falcon 8 and the other aircraft are a part. I do know someone that could come in and talk to us about this, but we're part of more of a plan into the software side of things. Yeah. I mean, it's only a vehicle to get into that sort of thing. We've seen 3DR pivot away completely from building stuff. The number was 150,391 people, of which only 102,769 actually re-upped.
And you know, if we're generous and say 1,000 of them bought them, and I think that's probably 10 times more than probably did. It's penny. I've always maintained the commercial drone part of the business, from a hardware point of view, is nowhere near as profitable as everyone thinks. Businesses do not buy new Altas, new M200s every year. You know, those products have a few year shelf life, 3 or 4. For most commercial operators, they're at the higher end of their budget. There's not many of the commercial operators are buying new hardware all the time or doing the high end work for it. It's simply not that many.
No, well, what they should really have done is turned around and stuck a Pixhawk in it. I think after the F8, they should have said, okay, right, well, how are we going to compete with the likes of DJI? The only way to do that is to rely on a huge community developing new stuff for you. You know, if you're going to do all of the custom coding yourself, just think of the amount of costs. Like, you know, just to have 5 decent software developers, well, you're probably looking at, you know, at least 40 grand each, at least.
Well, I think we've got to frame this sort of in historical correctness, really, though, because you got to remember that machine came out of a time when the BDJI, before DJI, it had the ability to look up, and it was rock solid. I saw the first UK one being purchased. I went to their demo, and it's a first somewhere in Warwickshire or somewhere like that. And what blew everyone's mind was they flew one of their little things out of the chap's hand, punched it up out so we couldn't see it, pulled the throttle back, and boom, back in down into his hand it came. And you've got to remember, back in 2000 and early whatever it was, quadcopters just used to wobble around the sky. it used to be a mess of stuff.
Mine still do.
Yeah, and so to see this was amazing. And then the Falcon 8 was extraordinary. And, of course, it had the ability, which DJI still doesn't have. Well, it does, doesn't it, in the one where they've stuck the camera on the top, but to look up. So from an inspection point of view, what a handy bit of kit. So I'm sure they were able to make a chunk of money. But they've gone on. That company's gone on. They're making all the stuff for the flying taxis and other stuff. They're doing all right.
It's interesting. Intel, none. I don't see any big business really getting heavily involved. For them, it's just too messy. It's always been.
Well, it was that CAO that left under a cloud, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He was the big fanboy for it. I can't remember why he left under a cloud, but they had.
And they change every. What's a CEO of these big companies? Average life 4 to 6 years. That's the general reality. Anyone outside of Apple and the ones that have the more long-standing people, if you look at the Microsofts, all of these companies, 4 to 10 years, and it's a move on. So any project like this is never going to survive the budget cuts that come with it. And Intel aren't even in a great place right now anyway. They're financially they're always solid, but they're falling. The computer market does this, and AMD comes up, and AMD is rising massively again now, and Intel have just had a lot of trouble. They had to get rid of their head of their graphics chipset area, and they've got a new guy in there. So they're not particularly in a good place, because their problem is they rely on what's going to happen in 3 years. And what if what's in their cooking pot today isn't going to get them where they need to be in 3 years? They've got serious trouble.
Can I put my tinfoil hat on? I wonder if this NPRM is a good way of excluding DJI and other overseas companies from the US market. If you're not certified, you don't fly.
Well, that's an interesting point, because they will all have to be certified. And, let's look at this logically. How nowhere in it does it say no foreign. However, all security measures do come into it. And now there was an exact wording which I looked at, which I rose an eyebrow at. And what it was basically saying is a company that will be allowed to be a USS, for instance, security concerns will be involved in that. So I don't see any external US-based companies being allowed to become a USS.
Surely not. I wonder. I hope nobody from a potential UAS is on the committee writing these rules, because I mean, obviously that would be some sort of no-no if
Who's
Gary,
done
America's a democracy. The USA is a democracy, which means that since over 85% of all UAS traffic is recreational, that border is loaded with recreational groups.
Oh, of course it is. It must be. You're right. It must be. It must. So if we were to look at the list, the smallest group wouldn't be the recreational flyers. It can't be. You're right.
Yeah.
Can't be. Couldn't be that Boeing, Air Mac, Precision Hawk. I haven't got the list in front of me. Couldn't be that they're in the top of the list.
This is why the rules are written, like as was said before. But people who don't understand what's going on. It's the blind leading the informed, and like a company like Boeing with an outstanding track record. No, we'll use a different one of safety. These things all erode the public's trust in the process and the outcome, I hope.
Yeah. It doesn't sit well that isn't it interesting that the commercial drone alliance are jumping up and down that this isn't happening fast enough, because it's their clients that are going to go bust if this doesn't happen quickly, because they are running out.
You can hear the venture capital rushing for the doors to get out of there.
You can, that's right.
Because this is another 10 years of funding. That's what this is. Because if this passes, they can sit there and go, we've now got control. Now we need more money to be able to build something to go in that. And
of course, it's a double-edged sword, because they've been saying today we can't do anything because the regulation isn't in place. And if the regulation is in place and they still can't deliver, well, that's the end of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to understand all this VC money and lobbying groups. Really, I don't really understand how they can be allowed to have such power so obviously. But there we go. That's what's happening. Sorry, America.
I suspect the CDA is quite happy with the timeframes involved, which are actually going to be like 3 to 4 years, because it gives them an excuse not to have to show a return on the VC investment until then. They can say to the VC partners, oh, look, the road is clear, but we're just going to have to stick it out for another 3 or 4 years till the regulations come into effect. So just keep the money coming, and that's more opportunity to take your dividends and to siphon it out to your mates and things. And then when the regulations finally come into effect, oh, we were wrong, never mind. Move on to a new investment, shall you? That's it. It's a case of stringing things out. I've seen it with companies so many times, like the Martin Jetpack here in New Zealand. It raised so much venture capital, and every time it was supposed to produce something, there was always something got in the way, which meant that milestone has to be pushed out a little bit because of circumstances beyond our control. But stick with us, because the future is bright, until finally everyone just says, no, you're pulling our chain, and they disappear. So the more excuses you can provide, and not having the regulations in place for another 3 or 4 years is a legitimate reason to say we cannot deliver on our promises, but it's not our fault, so just keep backing us. I think they may be feigning outrage at this stage, but I think they're very happy that this wasn't going to come into effect tomorrow, because they're just not prepared to deliver the solutions they promised.
Now, I'm going to say the bad news I hear. I honestly think this will virtually get in place as it is. And I hate to say it, I don't like it. However, there is that much bad in here. They can pull 50% of the bad out, and it's still shocking. They can literally pull out the worst 3 bits, and it's still bad.
Notice they waited till after Neil Armstrong died, because he would be a strong voice in favour of the hobby. They waited till he died, and then they rolled this out. They could have done it years ago, but they just decided, no, we'll wait till perhaps the American icon is gone, and then he won't bother us. Maybe we can you got a Ouija board, anybody?
Sorry, I kind of feel a little bit out of the loop on this one. So which regulations is he talking about? Is it US?
Yeah, the US. Yeah.
So what have they brought out?
If you are a man that goes through regulation with a fine-tooth comb, you're pretty much out of the loop, aren't you?
I just want to get a rock.
No, I haven't quite made it across the channel yet. I'm still working my way through the EASA. I've been doing it for the last 6 weeks.
Let's pick the worst 3 bits. All Model RC will be restricted to flying in one of up to how many? 90% of AMA sites, basically, because they estimate 90% of them will be compliant. They will not be allowed to fly anywhere else because they don't comply with drone ID, and there will be no way to retrofit.
And but wait, there's more. You've got 1 year to submit the list of sites. If you want your field to be a site, you've got a year to put that in, and after that year, no more. There'll be no more. Finished. Ever. We won't let any more new model flying sites.
I found a loophole.
What's that?
Yeah.
What you do is you submit a form for every single square meter in American soil.
I don't think they would grant that.
I don't think they grant it. Remember, they've got to grant it as well. Yeah, worst one, Model RC. Number 2, every aircraft sold will have to have both network and broadcast ID. So there's 2 levels of remote ID, what they call standard and limited. Both will be required to broadcast locally, just like DJs we have today, as we will have in EU, which is fair enough. But you will also be required to connect to the network as well and subscribe to a USS, which is a UTM, and you won't be allowed to take off if it doesn't work. You'll be allowed to take off, though, if it's out of coverage. Just won't be allowed to take off if it doesn't work.
Do you think that kind of regulation could come over to the UK?
That is a big concern now. That's a couple of people did bring up is, will the EU look at the US proposals and now say we didn't go far enough? And that is an interesting point, because if we take what could they cherry pick from it, it's the network ID aspect. There's a couple of interesting fundamental bad bits about the network ID. From a governmental point of view, they will love it because they will be able to see the location of every drone flying in the entire US of A at any moment in time. They will be able to log on and go, that every dot on that screen is every drone connected. They will also be required to hold your flight data in that server for 6 months, no less than 6 months and no more than 6 months. They will have every history of every drone flight in the USA on record for 6 months that complies. And if you don't comply, you're not allowed to fly anywhere but the specific sites.
And if you have a compliant aircraft, it's not allowed to fly at the specified site.
The specified sites. If you have an aircraft that is allowed to fly outside them, you're not allowed to fly in them. Retrofit is close to impossible because of the way they've done the legislation. Let's pick another really shitty bit of it.
You have to, you have to get the aircraft certified and all the bits of paper done. So if you build something at home, you're just not going to. You're not going to send it off to the FAA to send off your model Spitfire or an America Thunderbolt or P-51 or whatever. You're just not going to do it.
Now, there is a limited ID option, which means the aircraft doesn't have to broadcast, but the ground station does. But that is network, and you will not be allowed to fly unless you're connected to the internet and logging the data. Now, that could be done via an app. That could actually be done fairly simply via an app. But again, it won't be retrofittable because the aircraft must also meet certain standards, such as serial number has to be compliant, just like the EU, and it still has to be registered. Every aircraft individually will have to be registered with the FAA before they will give you permission to fly it in US airspace. Via its unique serial number.
It sounds totally reasonable to me. It sounds.
This. Jesus Christ! I'm moving to the US.
Yeah, time for some witch burning. Yes.
It must be that old thing of shouting, jumping up and down for with loads of stuff and only expecting to get 25 to 50% of it actually through. But as you say, that's still pretty horrible. Yeah, whatever happens.
And the funny thing is, sorry, you carry on.
Go on. No,
I was just going to say, but the funny thing for drone users, it's really not that bad. This is the funny bit. All of this legislation has been for years. Drones are dangerous. Drones are evil. Drones have caused this. Reality is, this isn't. It's going to for a drone user, you're going to have to pay a bit of a monthly subscription and have a data plan and a compliant product, which will probably cost 30% more than it does today because they'll get the way we're being able to do that. That's about the worst of it. It's going to hit you in the pocket. For the bits of the industry that everyone has said has always been affected by bad drone users, they're completely annihilating them. They are literally lining them up in the back of the car park and shooting everyone. They are
the AMA thinks they've won. The AMA says, this is good, we've protected our flying fields. The AMA, too much cocoa in that place. It's terrible. They're all out of their brains.
Is anyone see what Patrick's written? I don't like that.
Talking about
I'm in Bruce.
Yeah, Kitty Hawk. Well, it's not Kitty Hawk necessarily, is it? Let's get him in. Let's get him in. It's actually all of this is actually Patrick's fault because he took an aircraft that so terrified the military and everyone. Oh no, that's the wrong link. We're sending the right link. So terrified the American military that they felt they had to regulate everything. And this was back in, I think, about 2009.
I blame this guy from New Zealand who built an ICBM. I think it all stems back, right, to this guy in New Zealand now.
What the FAA has to remember is that we've got a cruise missile. Oh,
God.
Hang on. Is that a knock at my door?
Yeah, we're there. I'm just going to get naked ready because we're about to get done over. Yeah.
Do you think pictures of me in the media with a big cruise missile in my garage might attract attention to this particular subject?
I bet you could get on the front of the sun. I reckon he could get on the front of the sun with that, wouldn't he?
Maybe.
Yeah, I might even get on page 3 if I dress appropriately.
I was going to say, if you sit on it.
But unfortunately, all of this is just the playbook of the people that are on that committee, and it's what they want to happen, and they're letting it happen.
And honestly, I think we're screwed. I think we're not screwed. I'm sitting pretty. I love it.
Well, you've got to remember that pissed off a lot of people. All the STEM and STEAM programs are going to be wildly affected by this. And there's a lot of good people who have got influence operating in those things in the education system. STEM and STEAM are really big in the USA. We recruit them. That's going to put a lot of pressure on the things that affect so many different organizations and people and groups and peripheral hobbies that I think, I honestly believe that we will certainly delay it significantly and cause it to be thrown back at the FAA for a rework rather than it going through as proposed.
Yeah, I think so. It's going to have to be. My concern is it will roughly get through largely. Drone ID is going to happen. I think the network ID is going to happen. I think they'll fluff this out by making some concessions for the AMA, tickle them, make them a little bit happy so they get on board, because it won't take a lot. They're quietly behind this, frankly, by the look of it, and they'll tickle them, give them some concessions, and something will kick off in the news. There's always something going on with drones in America in the news. So, there's been something to do with drones this week, isn't it? Some foreign drones. There's always something, and they'll slide it.
Never fly a drone. Never fly a drone near an airport. People could die. Look at Baghdad.
Yeah, exactly. Oh dear.
They just proved that was dangerous. Yeah.
So Ian, getting this, just trying to understand it, because I'm still confused by this American stuff.
Yeah.
If you want to fly a model aircraft in America, you can still do what you want to do as long as it's at one of these sites.
Only up to 400 foot, and only at one of these sites. Would be correct.
Sorry, up to 400 feet at one of these sites.
Up to 400 foot maximum at one of these sites only. Yes.
And you don't need the remote ID rubbish.
No, they won't allow remote ID on those sites. In fact, the specific requirement is these sites do not have remote ID. I guess the logic for that is that they don't want 10 aircraft all transmitting from those locations, or 20 or 30 aircraft, because it would become a mess.
So let me get this right. Recreational drones have never been used in a terror attack on US soil. They've never claimed a human life in the USA, but they want to track every single one of them. However, manned aircraft have been used multiple times by terrorists to attack people, but they're not going to track all the manned aircraft. This picture doesn't quite gel for me.
There's no need to do that. You don't need to track all the manned aircraft. Oh, Patrick came and went. Oh, there we are.
Yeah.
Got rid of him.
Wise words, Patrick. Oh, he's back again. Oh, we better not talk about it. He's back. Blast. Oh, but we can't hear you. Oh, that's how we like him. Perfect.
Let him go for 20 minutes and say nothing, right?
Yeah.
Use
Can't
sign
hear you. Try
language.
again, Patrick. Try again.
I'm all in. Exactly. I'm all in with Bruce, man.
But let's actually put a slightly. I'll ask you seriously. You were there. You did fly at the kind of the instant that kind of kicked this all off when you went on. Was it at Quantico, the flying demonstration that you took along your slow stick and frightened them all with it?
I did, and anybody that's seen the picture, they were talking about N numbers on aircraft, and so the first time my aircraft was presented to the FAA commercial system, I wrote on the slow stick there N number here, so it's 10 millimeters high, 1 centimeter, and they walked up, and I know this is a family program, but the guys from certification walked up and they were like, I think we might have effed up. And I said, you're never going to see this stuff. None of this, they all think of it like it was going to be on airport operations. So we caught the FAA flat-footed. I was
talking about the time when you had the technology demonstrator with the jets and stuff like that. Because I personally, that's what I believe. You were on that, weren't you, when you went down? I think with Chris Anderson. And
no, he wasn't there. But that was at that where they were flying the jets and all of the AMA stuff. I was supposed to fly at the NASA Dryden facility, which is now not the Dryden facility anymore. But I was not allowed to fly my commercial system at the Dryden facility because of frequency concerns. After I filled out about 20 pages of paperwork, I had to get a letter from the AMA board to allow me to fly a commercial system at an AMA field. Kicker on the deal, though, was that no one from FAA ATO bothered to come out to see the commercial drone system fly.
But the military were pretty shocked by what the model jets could do. Nobody realized they could fly as fast, as far as all the other things. And that to me is actually, what year was that? Was it 2008, 2009, something like that?
Either end of 2008 or beginning of 2009. Now, the other thing that they didn't understand was the 3D helicopters. There was a guy flying and anybody who's seen somebody fly a 3D helicopter, they were just like, as far as they're concerned, they didn't even know that existed. Now, the other note on that, though, that was at the same series of meetings that same week where Air Traffic Organization came out, FAA came out and said, we're writing the rules for the hobby. If you're not if you're not on a hobby field, you're not a hobbyist. Have a nice day. I turned to Rich Hansen, said, Rich, mobilize the membership today. He looked like he was going to cry. I said, dude, it's over. They're telling you right now. A week later, I talked to him. He was giggling. Oh, no, we worked out a deal with them. It's going to be fine. No worries. And I said, did you get that in writing from Chief Counsel at the FAA? He says, no. I said, it's not even worth it's nothing. It's nothing. So this has been coming for years and years. The FAA's got people, I know, some people like Kitty Hawk. I can't stand Kitty Hawk. As far as I'm concerned, drone Judists. They were out proselytizing, telling people that the RC hobby has changed. It's dangerous. It has to be brought under control. We need to do this. We have to repeal 336 so we can have remote ID so we can fly over people and beyond visual line of sight. Did anyone else notice in this document there's what's missing for beyond visual line of sight?
No, enlighten us.
A use case?
No, in the United States, I don't really want to, because like Bruce, I want to keep the powder dry, so I haven't really been talking about This is another one of the instances where the FAA is trying to pull a ruse on the industry. And basically what they're doing is throwing out another 3 to 4 year boat anchor. It's going to happen. I called it. I said when they repealed 336 and they were going to do the RID, they would come back and say, oh, it's going to be way harder than we thought. And golly gee willikers, there's tons to think about. And we didn't, it's going to take a few years. And but once it's done, you're going to be able to fly beyond visual line of sight and over people. It's just not true. And this UTM, rah-rah story, I think I talked about it here. Both UTM flying exercises that they had, the one here in Reno and out here in Corpus Christi, they had uncooperative helicopters invade their airspace. Did anybody read about that in the rah-rah story? And those were manned aviation. It was in the NOTAMs. It was all over the national news, local news, whatever. And you still had 2 instances where you had uncooperative aircraft fly into their airspace. UTM is predicated on people in this industry doing what they say they're going to do, being where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there. It's hokum. It's bullcrap.
But see that the flying, the reason I wanted to get that out of Patrick about that thing, and he had this, it was a slow stick, wasn't it? Wasn't it a slow stick? If
Yes.
All the way, you'll know what that is. He had it on it's a great picture of it sat on a Scan Eagle launcher, kicking about if you look somewhere. But that's really part of the SUS News creation story, really, because that's like when we started going, oh, hang on a minute, this isn't looking good, and so people haven't been believed since 2008, and it's finally coming through. I suppose it would. You say anything long enough, it will come true eventually, I suppose. But it's I think this RID rule in America is just, or the proposed, the NPRM it's just crazy worse than I ever thought it could be. It really is.
The thing that I don't understand with this all is, like, why are they not trying to align the remote ID and electronic conspicuity together into a single system? Because
I tell you why, and I'm sorry to butt in at you, because the UK is quite honestly the only country in the world that is properly thinking about electronic conspicuity. So you're coming from a bonus-filled place full of lots of ways of doing it and lots of creative thinking about it, and the Airspace for All campaign, and whereas America and Patrick can shout me down if he's like, is coming from the point of view of having venture capitalist backed folks that just want to take in all the cash. They're not. That's my rant.
The thing is, for separating aircraft, there's always been this well-known academic kind of construct, which is tactical, strategic, and collision avoidance. And they're kind of saying, let's get rid of the collision avoidance bit. We'll just deal with tactical and strategic through UTM, and let's avoid the collision avoidance part. But the problem is that the whole point of collision avoidance is see and avoid, which is, replicating the human ability to see and avoid another aircraft. So if you're relying on a UTM system, which is being powered on an AWS server or whatever else it is, through an app, then what? You're just asking for trouble, really, aren't you?
Well, it all boils down to, and the trouble is, we are preaching to each other in the choir. There are no risk assessments. There's no science. There's no data. There's no all of this. The numbers that the FAA pulled out for DJI's market share and the share of model aircraft stuff, that's just the BS numbers that have been coming out of people's mouths for ages. So those aren't real numbers at all. So, but we all know that. So there's no talking point, is it?
I don't get me wrong. UTM, I think, serves a purpose. But I would say that the collision avoidance component, which is using some kind of electronic conspicuity, really should be as important, if not more important, than the UTM part, because it's your last line of defense. And so, if you're just going to rely on a system which is a UTM system to separate aircraft, as Patrick says, if an aircraft is somewhere where it's not meant to be, then you're screwed.
There's no fallback. Where's the fail safe in the system? There isn't one, and that's where the dangers start to occur.
All of you guys, we are preaching to the choir. We're going to have to like get some oak pews in here so we can all just sit around and sing from the same.
That's why I'm going to the media. That's why I'm bringing the media in. They will educate the great unwashed with the other side of the coin. It's the only hope we've got is to make the public outraged.
Look, I didn't know you were that cool, Bruce, with the AC/DC. I like that. Now, all of this stuff, all of the points that were hit all make sense. So, one of the things that I have complained about for a long time was that no baseline has been established for the human eyeball seeing a void. Okay, we've been talking about this for 20 years. And one of the issues that we do have here, I don't care who feels like this RID thing is going to work, or who thinks that UTM is going to work, or any of the rest of this happy horse crap is going to work. I want to see security. I want to see certification, and I want to see a detect or sense and avoid system that's certified. Anybody thinks you're flying beyond visual line of sight willy-nilly without any of that is crazy. Just crazy. It's not happening. And, flying over people, where are the certification standards for these toy grade aircraft? Where's the mean time between failure numbers? I mean, if you really look and you dig through and see the mean time between failure numbers, they are low. They're so low that you're gonna have problems, and people are gonna get hurt, and things are gonna fall out of the sky. And public acceptance is going to be a problem.
Look, I tell you what you can do, Patrick. In what are we, 2020? In 5 years' time, in 2025, if you can send me along the data, I'll be reading it in my flying taxi that I'll be flying then from somewhere to somewhere. I believe 2025 is when, so I'll get to it then.
Just to address what Patrick said there for a moment, have you noticed that in the latest update for the Mavic Mini, they've introduced a monitor for battery charge cycles? They are trying to bring in, I think, some kind of preventative maintenance schedule to improve that mean time to failure by possibly requiring the pilot to keep an eye on and refusing to fly if you've got more than, say, 300 cycles on a battery. DJA might decide that's unsafe, you need a new battery. Maybe they'll do the same with props. Maybe they'll try and integrate this in to get that special privilege.
Or get that little bit extra payment while you're not selling aircraft.
Because you need to spare parts.
Sale.
Well, to be fair though, I think that's probably not a bad idea.
They've always had that on the other craft, mind. That's always been on the bigger ones.
Batteries. If you're flying it beyond 300 cycles, like either you need to really understand your batteries and your battery management, or you need to be discarding them after 300 cycles. If you don't understand battery management and how to check a battery for its health, then if it's good on 300 cycles, get rid of it.
Nothing. Yeah, I'll get a number of units of fingers. I'll throw at him.
Gary's looking at his battery log, if it exists at all.
No,
looking at sort of 800 cycles, 700 cycles.
Yeah,
this raises another interesting thing about enforcement. Remember, in Canada, they brought in rules. It must be going on 9 months, or maybe even a year ago now. The rules came in Canada, where every pilot of every craft has to keep a flight log, a maintenance log. I haven't heard of one case where anyone's been asked to present those logs. So it's not being enforced.
Well, if you're hopping a skip, if you're having to register the aircraft or be connected via an online scheme, you're hopping a skip away from having to submit online logs, maintenance schedules for it, aren't you? It's already chatting. It might as well say this is charge number 50 of this battery. Might as well do that while it's there.
Well, to be fair, in the UK, it's very easy to get 500 flight hours. You could do that in less than a week. You basically just put a random number generator into an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can have 500 hours literally within minutes. It's very easy.
I've done a lot of flying with Captain Parker as well, as they say. Lots of people do that. And they go an hour build and sit at the end of the runway and just run the Hobbs meter. Don't go to eat sandwiches. But it's
Not that I would advocate anyone did that, but just picking up on the point that actually a lot of the evidence that you use for being able to take more risk within the drone world is very flaky evidence, to say the least. But it's I guess the CIA kind of have to trust that you are telling the truth. I'm sure most people do, but there's always going to be some who are imaginative about how they create their flight logs.
Yeah. That is an old problem. Now, come on, Ian. I've just remembered. Actually, we're going to have to wrap this up because our power is about to go out. We are having rolling power cuts here, and our power utility, National Power Utility, ESCOM, is making the power cuts tonight from 1 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock in the morning, because tomorrow is the day on which our equivalent of UK A levels, high school certificates, I don't know what it would be in America, you're leaving school, whatever certificate, the results come out tomorrow. So they're kindly giving us our power cuts tonight, so in the morning the students can log on and get their results. So that's all right, isn't it? I mean, that's perfectly fine.
Is South Africa out of coal or something?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, why is there power cuts?
Because they haven't done any maintenance. I'm going to show you an app. They haven't done any maintenance at all to the coal, to all the power stations for 10 years, and they're all collapsing. So we get there we are. So just about everybody here has it. Oh, it's not going to show. Has this app called ESCOM Push, and it was built of great apps are built out of necessity, aren't they? By a couple of lads who it's impossible to find a schedule. I'm ranting about this now. There's schedules for load shedding, and I'll read you what it says. ESCOM to implement stage 2 load shedding from 01 to 06 tomorrow. That's tomorrow now, in order to accommodate the release of matric results, the student results. And then the comment is, we didn't make this up. So that means stage 2 means we'll get 2 power cuts tomorrow, and they'll drop 2 megawatts of power within the country per slot. And it goes all the way up to stage 8 now. And if it gets to stage 8, we have 5 power cuts of 2.5 hours. That's 50. Yeah, that's right. 5 power cuts of 2.5 hours every day. It's deep joy. So if you're coming on holiday,
really? So are they doing anything about this? Is there like new power station?
No, the power stations that are failing are the brand new world's largest coal-fired power stations that are not fully commissioned yet, and they are failing all the time.
So you now qualify for third world status, or
I was going to say. Yeah.
No, I think we qualify for advanced because we've gone. As the running joke here is, what did we have before candles? And it's the electricity. What did we have before candles? I've got a little bit of solar, but not enough to run all this now. But it's causing havoc in the business world. It's causing absolute havoc. The shops shut, shopping malls shut. They shut their doors because obviously all the lights. Because malls are just, there's no light, there's no windows, no natural light. And so the lights go off. They don't have enough generation to make it all themselves. And people just go in and raid them. So it's easier just to shut them all. And that's what happens.
So if you want to buy petrol, you have to take a goat and then wind the handle yourself. Pay with a goat and then wind the handle.
Yeah, we don't have many petrol-powered goats here. I mean, we've got them, but they don't run on petrol. Yeah.
Has there been, on a bit of a serious note, before you do get cut off,
yeah,
has there been any really good drone stories coming out of the whole horrible Australia thing? Because obviously it's a mess over there, and it's shocking, really, isn't it? They've
been touting drones for surveilling the fires. But it's a bit of a problem, isn't it? Because you can't fly drones with helicopters, and helicopters are fighting the fires, and a crashed drone is a potential ignition source. So
yeah,
you're going to weigh up the goods with the bad. Now, I haven't seen of a lot of drone stuff being used, possibly because of those factors. I don't know.
A group has stood up of RG Pilot developers and a few other people have stood up to have a think about it. They kindly invited me to it, and I can't help thinking it's not a bad idea for rovers. And just sat behind Mr. Mad there is his new rover.
I'm going to try something I've not tried. Now, I don't know how accurate.
Oh, he's going to try and shoot the camera.
I'm going to try and shoot the camera. I am. I've got it faced on at the moment.
Go on then. Impresses. The thing is, the speed at which you're doing this is effortless, really.
Yeah, sorry. There's a safety feature I need to turn off.
Children could do it. Bet your children could do it.
Well, there's a safety feature I need to turn off. There's actually a limit on being able to shoot above a certain angle, so you can't shoot people in the face.
Well, only short people.
Yeah, right. Where's the option to turn that off? Right, Gel
This is great
right.
television.
This is great TV. Turned it off. Stop whinging with it. Right, try again. With it. I've just loaded it. I'm waiting for it to. Oh, there we go.
My eye! Oh.
Excellent. Right. Hang on. Where's that claim site? Have you been blinded by a laser? Contact.
Do not look at laser with remaining good eye.
That's right.
Oh, there's little balls everywhere. Do they shoot yourself in the head?
There's no need for you to say that. There's really no need.
Do they if you shoot yourself in the face? Not really. Yes, I built it. I built it over the weekend.
We're doing YouTube properly now.
Yeah.
If there's got a laser on it, you can't use it outside in case you direct the laser at an aircraft, can you?
Yeah. I don't know if it's a laser or a super bright LED.
Do not look down the barrel.
Oh dear. But that's and I don't understand how those wheels work, and we'll have to save that for another.
I tell you what, yeah, they are mind bending how they work, and especially when you put them on wrong, which I did. So
fair play.
Just so long as you don't break the USB port, you'll be fine.
Oh, don't go there. The stuff I've messed up the last month. Honestly, I've not broke as much stuff in my life. I built this one with the kids over Christmas. It was bought for the kids.
Yeah, whatever.
The kids.
And be careful if you're pulling that DJI transmitter apart. There's a little ribbon cables. You can break those quite easy, apparently.
Fucking go there. Don't. That was an entire... You know when you do something... Bruce will know what I mean. If I was just doing it, it would never have happened. However, when you're trying to do something with a camera there and a camera there and doing something there, and then you're doing that, and you're thinking the only way I'm going to be able to do that is that, and then you go in, oh shit! It was basically along the lines of how it went. Yeah, I fucked my receiver up, pardon my French.
Sod's law. Yeah.
Transceiver. Yeah, I'm going to have to send it back and pretend I know nothing about it.
They'll never have seen the video.
They'll never have seen
No, well, that's the lucky thing, isn't it? That is the lucky thing.
I would say the ad revenue would cover the repair. It's not going to remotely cover the repair in a million years. So I'm going to be out of a pocket on that one forever. Actually, the only reason I actually really put the video out after, I had to open it up because I dislodged something because I dropped it. I didn't drop it. Kids dropped it. So I opened it up and thought, I may as well do this. And then when I did that, I messed it up even more. Shocking state of affairs.
You're not the only one. I saw someone else pulling theirs apart, and they nearly had a similar accident. The case, both halves went flying, but fortunately, the battery ribbon pulled out of the PC board. But I had no trouble at all. I was trying to do 3 different things at once and doing all 3 of them badly. It's weird because it's funny. Touchwood, you go through phases of breaking stuff and not breaking stuff doing this kind of thing. You probably know what I mean, Bruce. You know, sometimes taking stuff apart is destructive and you have to accept doing that. And, you know, you take it apart once and you get away with it. And then you think, oh, I'm doing that and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to put it on this box so it doesn't slip and trying to do that. And I had to put a bit more force on the screw. And rather than hold it and put the force on, I just put a bit more weight on it. And the screwdriver just went like that, and it just went straight through the center of the cable, literally straight through the center. I've called every favor in I know, and I can't fix it. You can't scrape back the plastic and run jumper wires and with a backing, plastic backing.
It's double-sided with about 30 traces on each. It's horrendous. I've been trying to find cables just to go on the connectors, and I'll you know, if I could find something to go on each side with bare wires or something like that, and I'll mat it up. But it's, again, like all modern technology, it's not designed to be repaired, especially when an idiot breaks it.
We are going to have to go because I'm going to get cut off very, very shortly. Bruce, did you put the link to the fundraiser for your daughter in our comments? I can't remember.
No, I didn't. I'll email it to you. So if you want to add it to the video when it goes on YouTube, you can do that probably.
It's on YouTube now, mate. But I'll do it.
Guys,
I'll do it.
Can I say something? If anyone has ever watched one of Bruce's videos, if this man has helped you in any way over the years, please go and watch this video and please support him. I'm partly of what I do is because of this man. So you can blame him. But I have those of us who've watched Model RC, who've been involved in it. This man has provided more content than anyone else for the hobbyist in the Model RC industry. He doesn't ask for anything. He never tries to ask for anything. Please watch the video. Please get involved.
Now you're making me all embarrassed.
No,
absolutely. Now, was that on RC Model Reviews or XJet, Bruce? I can't remember.
XJet.
What's that? On XJet, yeah.
Let's see if we can get that link up before we go, and I'll hear that. And there's so much, so much that I've learned from him. My 14-year-old, 15-year-old, nearly 16-year-old lad now. He's loved your videos for years, and unfortunately holds me to your standards, which I can't stand. But no, he loves the videos. Everything he does is that. Here we are. I found it. I'm going to put the link in the video here. Give Bruce a hand, peoples. And on that note, if that goes, is that going to go? Yes, that's gone. Right. Take care, everybody. See you next week, 2100 GMT, 1-to-1 ratio, man. Thank you for being so pedantic. Ian, I hate you. You have that thing I want. I hate you. And Bruce, what can we say? He is an Australian pretending to be Kiwi. We'll see you again next week, 2100 GMT. Take care, DV, or wherever you're in the world. Look after yourselves. Bye-bye.